The long-awaited, pivotal and hugely consequential parliamentary vote in Armenia is now over. The result is a victory for Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and his civil contract party, which has managed to retain its parliamentary majority. Yet the outcome, which is still preliminary and will become only fully official once the Central Electoral Commission has gone through all the complaints and verified and certified the final tallies, is not without important details. Whilst Prime Minister Pashinyan remains firmly in charge of the nation, and the parliament of course, he has fallen short of the two-thirds constitutional majority that would have afforded him near complete freedom of political manoeuvre. Indeed, depending on the final outcome of the ongoing recount process, there remains a distinct possibility that he could even lose the absolute majority, in other words, fall below the 3/5 threshold he presently appears to command with 64 projected seats in the National Assembly. The elections may now be practically behind us, but the period between now and the end of the year promises to be exceptionally important for Armenia's domestic political trajectory, for the future of the peace agenda with Azerbaijan, and for the wider affairs of the South Caucasus. I'm Orkhan Amashov, you're watching Context, and joining me now in the studio is Murad Muradov, co-founder and deputy director of the Baku-based Topchubashov Centre. Murad, what a great delight to welcome you in the studio.
Good evening, Orkhan. So nice to be here finally.
Murad, you and I and other colleagues have been discussing pivotal, crucial Armenian parliamentary elections over the past few months. The elections are now over. Of course, final results are yet to, official results are yet to emerge after all that recount and so forth. But what is your evaluation? Let's look at it, from a very basic point of view. Pashinyan, before this election, had 31 seats. I mean, his party had 31 seats in the National Assembly and commanded a two-thirds majority, absolutely vital. So it had constitutional majority, basically, to be able to initiate constitutional referendum and, of course, amend constitution without needing referendum, as I understand. Now he has got absolute majority with projected 64 seats. But he can even lose that if the prosperous Armenian party manages to get to parliament, which is yet uncertain. So what's your evaluation? How strong Prime Minister Pashinyan in the National Assembly now?
Well, obviously, if we judge by sheer numbers, it's a certain downgrade, indeed. And there have been, let's say, expectations and forecasts suggesting this for a few reasons. Well, first of all, of course, all the things that happened in the last 5 years, from the end of separatist regime in Karabakh and Armenians' equivocal recognition of Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, followed by the peace process, which last year, which finally brought the two leaders to Washington, where they initialed the peace treaty, which is perceived and presented by revanchists in Armenia, to whom, let's say, the biggest chunk of the opposition belongs as treason, or at least, say, a threat of national interests. And of course, given this, Pashinyan's position would have been quite shaky. I mean, and also, let's say, in the last couple of years, he became a bit more divisive, given, let's say, the manifold political processes happening in Armenia, the arrests of some opposition figures, including basically the leader of the biggest opposition party, newly found, but already the biggest opposition party, the Strong Armenia of Samuel Karapetyan, and his propensity to regularly polemicize his opponents in rather harsh terms, let's say, personal terms sometimes, it kind of, I think, polarizes society. And of course, some people turned against Pashinyan due to the influence of the church, which is still very strong in Armenia, and which has, let's say, has been supporting the hardline nationalist elements in the Armenian politics. So yes, I think this certain, let's say, decrease in Pashinyan's seats was predictable, and honestly, a couple of months ago, I wouldn't have excluded even, let's say, even the smaller vote for Pashinyan. So basically, he has escaped the worst, and I still think, I mean, given all circumstances, that he will be effectively, let's say, in control of the domestic politics. Even though, yes, there may be some stronger opposition to his party rule in the parliament.
Yeah, I mean, there's no single doubt civil contract party led by Prime Minister Pashinyan is fit to govern. There's no doubt about that. We talk about, absolute majority. Even if the absolute majority is lost, there's still a simple, solid parliamentary majority. What do you make of this story revolving around the party led by Mr. Tsarukyan, known as Prosperous Armenia Party? If they manage to get to parliament, if they manage to overcome this 4% threshold, which is a massive question now, with recount being considered at this very moment, will that endanger Pashinyan's strengths, his ability to govern? Do you think there is a massive difference between absolute majority and simple majority for this particular purpose?
Well, for this purpose, there are a number of laws, according to Armenian legislation, which is quite complex, I would say. Sure. A number of laws which, let's say, cannot be cancelled or amended without the 60% majority. And if we assume that Nikol Pashinyan will try to pursue some really, let's say, divisive initiatives through the parliament, well, there's a risk that, yes, if he falls short of this threshold, the whole opposition may try to prevent him. And there is a risk that they may do it without any, let's say, practical purpose, but only, in order to weaken the image of Pashinyan and his party, to make it less governable, put it in this way. As actually we often witness in America when, a lot of, let's say, law projects get rejected only because, let's say, the opposition party doesn't want to, let's say, enact legislation, even if it can be objectively, for example, necessary, if it doesn't have any ideological undertone, just in order, to, let's say, make things more difficult for the.
I mean, how important is the fact that Pashinyan defeated his detractors in the light of what is widely described as a Russian hybrid threat? Because there was a massive external interference, the examples as to which have been floating in the air over the past few weeks and so forth. Do you think, there are two distinct points of view, of course. One is Pashinyan, as incumbent Prime Minister, used all the administrative resources in order to achieve his political objective. Simultaneously, he was fighting against a formidable external force, basically against Russia. When you bear in mind these two competing considerations, do you think it would be fair to say he achieved this fundamental victory, which is probably not a resounding victory, but still a fundamental, crucial victory, despite Russian external hybrid threat?
Well,
would that be a fair formulation, or do you think it's too? Do you think by this formulation we are really simplifying the overall situation?
Well, definitely. I'm sure that he and his, let's say, party members will actively use this narrative, since, we've witnessed that indeed there's been a huge influx of voters to Armenia in the last few days before elections,
yes,
and the great majority of them came from Russia, not from other countries. And even, let's say, judging by observations by some private people on social media, elsewhere, they were confirming that there are abnormally many people, let's say, at some, parts of the country coming to vote. I mean, in those regions where many, let's say, a lot of citizens have left to Russia. And it was reported. And of course, it's, it refers to the general problem of Armenian statehood. I mean, the fact that basically the majority of Armenians actually live abroad. And of course, many of them are well assimilated in their countries, but still some, I would say, maybe a couple of millions have Armenian citizenship. And this means that the people who are not connected to, let's say, Armenia with their day-to-day interests, who do not share the same, risks, fears, concerns, they still may come to the country and exercise their vote, despite the fact that, basically, it won't influence them so much. And I'm sure that the ruling party will try to double down its efforts, to limit the participation of these, let's say, foreigners. On the other hand, the fact that there was such a disproportionate Russian element in this, let's say, foreign voting, it will also, I would say, give a lot of, food for, discussions, conversations about the role Moscow plays. And now that, since they managed yet to increase their share of votes, but still, the opposition is not a majority, it will be a great test for the opposition, because they were talking a lot about how Pashinyan isn't fit for ruling Armenia, but mostly appealing to those emotional issues of Karabakh, of Azerbaijan, of Turkey. But now, I'm sure that part of the electorate will expect from them some tangible criticism and tangible initiatives. How to improve the country. And if they fail to do it, and if they just try to, mock Pashinyan over his alleged being treacherous behavior, I think their popularity will suffer a very huge test, I would say.
I will come back to the question about the impact of lack of the two-thirds majority on the Azerbaijan-Armenian peace process and on the practicality of removing the last obstacle on the way to the point of signing the peace deal. But now I would like to focus on Russia. What do you think Russia is going to do from now on? Because practically everybody that I've spoken to, talked about asymmetric war against Prime Minister Pashinyan. The intention wasn't really unseat him, but actually make sure his parliamentary majority is not strong enough for him to be able to fulfill his mandate and objectives. Just a couple of days before the elections, on the 29th of May, there was a call from Eurasian countries that Armenia should have a referendum and to make a decision whether Armenia wants to stay inside the Eurasian Economic Union or wants to join the European Union. Prime Minister Pashinyan said that it's not the right time to make this choice. Of course, the time will come and we'll make our decision. Do you believe that this will be one of the key really weapons in the hands of Russia and others for basically Russia force Armenia into choice? Because we heard that by the end of the year there could be something along the lines of Eurasian countries coming together and forcing Armenia into some sort of choice. What do you make of that?
Well, I listened to before elections even to a few interviews by Armenian politicians like Simonian and experts, and they were saying that there is no mechanism basically to force Armenia to make a referendum.
You can't really force Armenia to leave the Eurasian Economic Union without Armenia agreeing to that.
Of course.
That's number one point.
Of course. Well, of course also it's true that Armenia's membership to the EU can basically be such a momentum, such a Rubicon, which will make the Eurasian Union membership impossible. But let's be realistic. We don't expect EU membership for Armenia in the foreseeable future, at least in the medium term. So it's more like a distant perspective. On the other hand, the Eurasian Union is here and now. And what also caught my attention that among the first foreign leaders who congratulated Pashinyan with victory was Kazakhstan President Tokayev. And it might have been a message also that Kazakhstan does not partake in the campaign that Moscow launched. And basically, we all understand that in the Eurasian Union, the decisions are taken rather by one-sided. And it's not that Kazakhstan could have had a little say on that. But
do you think that particular call which was made on the 29th of May, was really a Russia-engineered initiative with other countries simply saying yes?
I'm not sure. Probably they deemed it unnecessary to argue with Russia on this. Again, given that for all.
So I imagine. I'm terribly sorry for interrupting you, but I'm sure Kazakhstan is an independent geopolitical balancing act executor itself, so that they wouldn't agree with Russia on everything, including Armenia, perhaps.
Yes, indeed. And we've seen actually, let's say, the strengthening of Kazakhstan-Armenia relationship in the last couple of years. And I think, the initiating of the peace treaty greatly contributed to it, and it kind of made, more friendly ties with Armenia, let's say, also more legitimate in the eyes of the public in Central Asia. And so, but you mentioned this notion of balance, and I think it kind of explains this, because for all Central Asian countries, of course, their all interests, they matter most, and be it Kazakhstan, be it Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, so I think they all have to have this, constant kind of trade sort of relationship with Russia, basically, trying to defend their interests when, for example, they see Moscow somehow encroaches on them. But also it means that on many issues they have to give in. And yeah, probably this was not so critical because anyway, it's understandable that there can be no enforcing Armenia to have such a referendum. And yes, we've seen also a lot of ways of pressure on centralization too. With different channels. And especially since no one of these countries supported Russia in its war against Ukraine, and they also recently have been diversifying their foreign policy, their economic ties with China, the West, India, and other actors. So yes, I think there is certain element of balance and concern.
Yes, indeed. It's very fascinating what's happening in and around Armenia at this very precise moment in time. Let's talk about the Azerbaijani condition regarding the signing of the peace deal. With a two-thirds majority not being there, not being enjoyed by Prime Minister Pashinyan, which he did enjoy before this election, his party will not be able to initiate a constitutional referendum. But yesterday, my colleague Guy Schoen was interviewing Arsen Kharatyan, who said that the parliamentary mechanisms are only one avenue for initiating constitutional change, and there are some other ways actually to fix this particular problem. What do you make of that? To what extent this result, falling short of absolute constitutional majority, which is the two-thirds majority, endanger the prospects of Azerbaijan peace? What will happen? There's one particular prospect. You're not signing the peace deal and then carrying on the current peace agenda, demarcation, delimitation, working on connectivity, Trump route for international peace and prosperity. Peace Bridge initiative will continue in full swing. Signing the deal is not everything, but what is the direct impact of the election result on the Azerbaijan-Armenian peace process?
From what I know, yes, a general understanding was that, yes, as long as, say, Pashinyan's or any government has basically declared its commitment to the peace process without any, let's say, attempt to reconsider the terms of the treaty and other parameters, let's say. So Azerbaijan will stick to it as well.
Sure.
And indeed, there are, I think, a lot of ways, to keep this momentum and be it, let's say, economic contacts, be it, say, civil society contacts, the process of delimitation, and even I would say establishing diplomatic relations, and and effectively opening the border, without having a formal peace treaty is not out of question. And we know examples of countries who still formally, haven't basically resolved their conflict.
Russia and Japan.
Russia and Japan. But still, basically they would do business as usual almost all direction. And anyway, I think what is also positive, actually, in my view, in an Azerbaijan and Armenia case, that I think both societies are quite realistic in the sense that no one of us expects a fast opening and fast kind of basically leaving behind of all this negative legacy. It's more like basically step by step, testing the ground. Okay, what is possible and what is really acceptable, and there's no pressure, to basically resolve everything. But of course, it would be much better to have a peace treaty. Well, when it comes to Kharatyan's comment, well, I know that yes, in Armenia, a referendum can be convened upon, let's say, a petition signed by at least 100,000 citizens, which is, again, given that, almost 1 million, let's say, voters, I think, voted for Pashinyan, maybe even more. So it's doable. But from what I also heard from some Armenian experts, there are some articles of the constitution which cannot be changed other than by, the referendum on them cannot be convened. Other than by, the decision of the parliament. And, changing the whole constitution, as far as I know, falls under this group. But again, so Armenian legislation is quite difficult, and maybe there are some, let's say, traps which we're not aware of.
The reaction coming from the Turkish Foreign Ministry was quite measured. The Turkish Foreign Minister welcomed the fact that the elections had been conducted peacefully and calmly, whilst also expressing the hopes that the post-election period, Armenian government will take bold measures, and we understand what that bold measure in this particular context is. Of course, naturally, signing the peace deal is not everything. It's very crucial. It's very crucial for a number of reasons, but there is a life elsewhere. There is a domain outside the signing. peace bridge initiative is a very good example of what may happen in the absence of peace deal. We have normalization efforts in the absence of the peace deal being signed. But the question here is that it's a very fascinating moment there to bear in mind. We already, getting information that there will be some sort of pressure on Azerbaijan to actually somewhat relinquish this constitutional demand. They're saying that Pashinyan has managed to retain the parliamentary majority, despite the fact that Russia wanted to unseat him. That Armenia achieved something very considerable. Why to insist on this constitutional demand, which could slacken the entire process? Because effectively, Turkish-Armenian normalization is another aspect of what should happen after Azerbaijan and Armenia signed a peace deal. Do you think, in the light of the impossibility, the constitutional impossibility of holding a referendum and getting rid of this particular obstacle that Azerbaijan has been insisting on, there could be new kind of pressure on Baku by European Union and some other actors in the direction of saying, relinquish, ditch your own demand? What do you make of that?
Well, we all witnessed, a lot of such attempts, say for the last couple of years, let's say before August last year, and they all failed. And I think Azerbaijan made it clear many times that yes, why it has this particular demand and what it wants to achieve, and why, for example, there is such a conditionality here. So I think, well, this kind of pressure is cannot be excluded, but it will be very unwise. And really, with all my doubts, I still believe that senior European politicians will be, would not repeat the same mistake again and pressure Azerbaijan. Well, of course, maybe they'll prefer the conflict is resolved sooner, especially given basically the polarization with Russia and the concerns in Europe that Russia may try to get back here. They often have this narrative that the more basically we have the uncertainty about the conflict, the peace, let's say, the easier it may be for Russia, to exploit it. But I think, well, Baku has also shown its flexibility in terms of practical steps, and I think that maybe, if we have a referendum not now, let's say now, and let's say a couple of years, let's say 3 years, if we keep the momentum, if we manage, to really enact this big measures on the ground, this referendum can actually be much safer. But what I mean is that, okay, for now, we still don't have a lot of, let's say, beneficiaries from expanded peace. Yes, of course, people are happy that no one is dying, and that we can live more safely, that mothers won't have to lament the children dying on the front line. But, yes, there's been some trade starting, but still, other than that, there's no real, let's say, cooperation on the ground, etc. Roads are closed, the border is closed. Imagine that if we, for example, have trip opening, and well, and also if there are people, at least in some form, traveling, and if there are more contacts also in the media elsewhere. So the idea of peace with Azerbaijan will fully, move from the realm of some abstract domain into tangible reality on the ground, and there will be more people who will be ready, say, to vote yes. Such a referendum. And maybe, if it happens in 2028, the chances for it to succeed are much bigger than if it happens right now.
And between now and 2028, a number of things may happen without actually the peace deal being officially signed and ratified. Muradov, I'm so grateful to you for this lovely conversation. Thank you. Well, the Armenian elections may be over, but the political story they have set in motion is only beginning. Prime Minister Pashinyan has defeated his detractors and secured another mandate, despite what many have described as significant external and internal pressures. He remains committed to his reform program and, crucially, to the peace agenda with Azerbaijan. Yet victory does not necessarily translate into unlimited political freedom. He has fallen short of constitutional majority and may yet find himself operating with a narrower parliamentary margin than initially anticipated. The challenge before him is not to become complacent or emboldened by electoral success, but to navigate the delicate balancing act that still lies ahead. Yet the prize at the end of the journey remains too significant, too consequential, and indeed too glittering to be ignored. You've been watching Context. I'm Orkhan Amashov, and see you very soon indeed.